Alright guys, this is not a picking video, but this is to document what is probably going to be a very long journey. And I'm beginning this journey because, well, I think it's time to learn something new. But the main reason is because Old Fast 911 keeps putting a boot into my ass about learning these Medecos. So here we go. This is a brand new Medeco cylinder. Before I start disassembling everything, I want to show you that at least before I start jacking around with it, it does work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by removing, according to Old Fast 911, all of the pins except pin 1. And then every time I progress through this learning journey, I'm going to try to document this. So today is December 18th, 2012. And let's see how long it takes for me to learn how to pick Medecos. Well, so far it's going really fast. This is still December 18th, 2012, and I haven't even put a pick. I've never picked a Medeco in my life. All I've done so far is I've removed all of the pins except pin number 1, according to the Old Fast 911's instructions. And I've taken the others and I've put them inside of these sequential bags. So hopefully over the next, well, year or so, I'll be able to progress through these and eventually open up a 6-pin Medeco. Alright, December 18th, 1 pin. There we go. I'm already discovering how difficult it is to manipulate those pins to the correct angle. Even after looking at the key and knowing the angle, I have already only on 1 pin and I've already cheated, something I really resisted doing, but that was the only way I could get a head start. So December 18th, first day. Hey, this picking Medecos. This was my first Medeco pick, by the way, ever. Picking Medecos not so hard, man. Piece of cake. You just saw me do it on camera. Hopefully we'll be able to do it with 2 pins here pretty soon. Alright, today is December 20th, 2012, the second day of the Medeco quest, and coincidentally, second day, second pin. So let's see if we can't get this done, and then I'll describe to you something that I learned the hard way through many hours of trial and error, and it was due mostly to my own stupidity, to be honest with you. And there we go. That first pin, for some reason, is a real bear. You almost have to turn him completely around to get him aligned. Here's what I learned. I don't know if you picked up, but I have a slightly different tension wrench this time. Let me hold the 2 of them side by side. This is the one I'm using now, and this is the one I started out with. Now you'll notice the bottom one is just a little bit longer and a little bit narrower, and that's because I kind of had grabbed it at random. It seemed to fit, but what I did also notice is it goes in there far enough to where sometimes, not every time, it interferes with that first pin and it wasn't allowing me to rotate him around correctly. So so I made a new one. Doesn't go quite as deep, and it does fit a lot tighter. It gives me a little better control of the core. So since we're going to be spending a lot of hours with this Medeco, and if you're going to do the same, go on the same journey, go ahead and take a few minutes and make yourself a dedicated tension wrench for your lock. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you at pin 3. Alright, today is December 22nd, 2012, the 4th day of my quest. I'm now up to 3 pins, and I've kind of fallen into a routine every night of picking this, I guess for about an hour while I'm watching the evening news. I just mindlessly play with it to see what I can get. I'm starting to develop a little feel for the pins themselves to kind of figure out which way that they're oriented, which, if nothing else out of this, I'm learning a little bit more refined touch on my picking. So let's see if we can do this. That first pin remains my nemesis. He just has to be completely turned around before he will give it up. There we go, 3 pins. And now I hope to see you on pin number 4. And by then, as I'm going along, my worry was that I'm developing a technique for opening this lock and this lock alone, because it's almost like it's getting choreographed. I know, like pin 1 I've got pretty well down, pin 2 I'm becoming more and more familiar with, and pin 3 I'm kind of still tweaking. It's kind of trial and error. But as I move down this direction on the stack, of course you have to pick these more and more frequently. You become more familiar with them and they become easier, and these become your really hard ones. If were I not learning more on my developing the touch, I would probably stop now. But I'm kind of committed to this thing. I am learning, even though I may not be able to pick other Medecos, but I am learning how to manipulate those pins. I've also noticed that the height is not so important. That's pretty easy to detect in these once you get it rotated to the right angle. And that seems to me, at least right now, that's the biggest challenge. So anyway, let's put in the 4th pin, and I hope to see you in 2 or 3 days. Alright, December 24th, Christmas Eve 2012, the continuing journey. We're up to 4 pins now, and let's see if we can get this dude picked on camera. As you would expect, the more pins you add, the more difficult it becomes, and I'm spending more and more time, probably about an hour to an hour and a half a day, trying to figure out how to manipulate the pins in here. So it is an investment in time. So let's see if we can catch this 4 pin on camera. Okay, I think I got 3 of them. Let's try that first pin, which is always my nemesis. Come on, dude. And then, of course, now you got to rotate him, and there we go. That first one, he takes a little bit of work, but there you go, 4 pins. I'm not going to gut this now, because you're not going to be convinced until I pick 6 of them. Once we get all 6, and I pick it on camera, and that's the day that I'll gut it and show you that everything is in there. But I got the key. Key does work, but of course there could be no pins and that would still work. So today is December 28th, 2012, and we're up to 5 pins in this continuing journey on trying to figure out how to pick Medeco locks. So let's see if we can't get this picked. I'll show you the key work still. There's 5 pins in it. We're not going to disassemble it today. We're going to disassemble it once we get all 6 picked. And then we'll look at the sidebar and all the other stuff. Today, let's just see if we can get 5 pins picked. Did we get our tension wrench in there correctly? course, pin 1's not going to cooperate. Come on, pin 1. And there we go. 5 pins. December 28th, 2012. Hey guys, this is going to be the final chapter on this Medeco, and unfortunately I am not going to be able to pick this one because the constant picking has damaged the key pins, which I'll show you in a moment. And now I can't even put the key in. It still works once I get it in, but then I can't pull it out. And I'm going to, in fact, let me just show you why that happened, why that's happened. Let me just grab one here. Whoops. Hope you can see it. Let me take him out of there. So this is fairly typical. Let me see if we can get this thing to focus. The constant picking and trying to turn these key pins, I have eroded the tip of each of the pins now to where some of them I can't even rotate internally anymore. They won't turn because I've taken to using the slender gem, and I think that sharp corner right up at the tip there, combined with the 15,000th, which I have found to be pretty effective for manipulating the key pins, has simply scraped away a lot, several thousandths of the tip of all of the pins, and they all look like this. In fact, I'm going to disassemble it and take a picture of all the key pins, and it'll be at the end of this video. But anyway, I decided to wrap it up. I did learn an awful lot from trying to pick these locks. I did, as you saw, I picked 5, but I neglected to gut it, so that really, I guess, in everyone's eyes, to include mine, doesn't really count. But what I can tell you, and having gone through this for 3 weeks, is that as you add the number of pins, the difficulty is going to increase almost exponentially, because then we start dealing with statistics and getting it rotated to the right angle, etc. So the binding order will also change as you continue to add the pins. Obviously the binding order changes, but mine changed pretty dramatically because I think the wear on the pins internally caused them to bind a little bit differently. I learned that sometimes instead of wrapping the back of the pick around a pin and pulling him into position, sometimes you can put him on the other side and you can push him into position, and that works pretty good. The most valuable thing I learned from playing with these, of course, is picking sensitivity. When I started, I couldn't tell anything about the tip of the key pin. I was just sticking it in there and mashing it. But having done this for well over 100 hours, this last week, actually week and a half, I've been on leave, trying to burn up some end-of-the-year leave, some use or lose, and I spent a big part of the last 10 days anyway, almost full-time picking on this. And I've picked it hundreds of times. In fact, if you look at the face of it there, you can see I've eroded the hundreds of attempted pickings. I've eroded the bottom of the keyway with the constant in and out. Now, by the way, I did get it picked with 6 pins twice, but again, it doesn't count. Unless you catch it on film and unless you gut it directly afterwards, and I understand that. I was able to determine after a while the shape of the key pins and also their orientations by using the tip of my pick, something I couldn't previously have done. So that in itself was worth all of the time I invested in playing around with this. I learned that when you start picking, choose a pick and stick with it. I learned that there's none really any better than any of the rest of them. It's just once you start using a pick and you get used to manipulating pins with it, stay with it. Now, I found myself changing picks, and every time I did it I had to relearn how to manipulate the pins. So pick one and stay with it. If you can, don't use a thin cylinder like this one, because a lot of times you're in the house and you're watching television and you're picking, and something this small is really hard to hold and tension at the same time. So if you can get a slightly larger cylinder, maybe like this one, it's much easier to hold. So when you see me picking locks from Medecos, probably the next one you're going to see me playing with is this one, now that I've learned all the touch and feel and the pick sensitivity. So try to use, if you do it, start with a fatter cylinder. The other thing I learned is I started by pinning up pin number 1 and then 2, then 3, etc., going back. If I had to do it again, I would do it in reverse. I would pin up 6 first and then move out. The reason for that is learning in the front is easy, but then as you progress towards the back, it becomes more and more difficult because of the confined space. If you learn on the most difficult pin first and then move out, your job is going to get easier as you move towards the final picking of all 6 pins. And the last thing, of course, is to expect some wear. So if at all possible, go ahead and get 2 of these keyed alike, or at least 2 sets of key pins, so that as you start to notice the wear or the inability to set some pins, as I'm seeing because of the wear on the tip of the pin, you can just change them out and you can just keep going, and that way you don't have to humiliate yourself like I'm doing right now. Anyway, I want to thank Old Fast 911. I really appreciate you putting the boot in my butt to start on these. I'd hesitated for years to begin picking on them, but now I have picked a 6-pin Medeco. I haven't got it on camera yet, but I certainly will. I'm not giving up. I'm going to have to, I've already ordered new key pins for this one, and I'm going to begin picking on this one next, and hopefully this will be the next one that you see me open on video. Anyway, everybody, I'm sorry I couldn't do the 6-pin on camera, but I got it up to 5, and at the end of this video I'll include a bunch of pictures to show you the incredible amount of wear you can expect on some of your key pins when you go through the learning process. Anyway, thanks for your time. Everybody stay safe and stay legal and keep picking these things.